Greetings, one and all. I wanted to do another little show on Gurdjieff. I wanted to continue on from some of the shows I was doing a few weeks ago, where I was talking about atmospheres and the atmospheres around us. And it got me discussing that with a few other people I know who read Gurdjieff. And we were talking about emanations and how the vibrations are affecting each other as we go about. And someone said to me, "Oh, don't you remember what Knott said? C.S. Knott in his book?" And I didn't. And they sent me the quote. They looked it up for me and sent it to me. Thank you. And they know who they are. So C.S. Knott writes in his book, Gurdjieff said that animations which mechanically flow out from people stink. But if one keeps them to oneself, they will accumulate, not pass from one, and will crystallize. The energy that passes from people, the emotions of a crowd, goes to the moon. I haven't got a picture of the moon, but goes to the moon up there. But a man can collect energy from a crowd as a dynamo collects energy from the atmosphere. I, C.S. Knott, found that I was able to, so to say, collect some of the energy from the group and keep my own from running to waste. Well, isn't that interesting? How he collects the energy from others, all that wasted energy. Me and Josh have spoken in one of our shows about how you can go to the prayers and steal the go to church and steal the prayers from people who are just doing, you know, blase prayers to the divine, not really meaning much, just sending little energies forward, little prayers forward that don't actually have much force behind them. You can steal them and use them to add to your force, to your prayers that you're sending forth. And we're saying the same here about these emanations with people. You can go out into the streets, go to the theatre, pick up everybody's wasted energy. Because as we've said in many shows, people waste energy. They're not being aware or awake as to what they're doing. They're just being mechanical, and that's all just wasting energy instead of using the energy and being awake, which is a higher vibration energy. So if anyone knows how to actually do this, please do get in touch because I find this fascinating. I have been to the churches and I try and say my prayers when everybody else is praying, but I don't know if I am doing it, if I am stealing that energy, like because Knott says here that he can feel the difference. He gets that energy. I not found that I was able to, so to say, collect some of the energy from the group and keep my own from running to waste. This energy he's stealing, he says it's the energy that passes from people, the emotions of a crowd goes to the moon, and wasted prayers, maybe if they're not in a church, if they're or a temple, wherever you go, and you hear people saying their prayers quietly, maybe they're not putting full emphasis into it or doing it consciously. Maybe it's a little bit and flaps up a little bit weakly up to the divine. Where if you're awake and conscious of what it is you're saying and meaning and really wanting to say your prayer, it has a better chance of reaching the divine. And I was talking to people about, well, perhaps some prayers are mechanical, maybe people saying the Lord's Prayer over and over again, or whatever prayers are important to you in your faith. Obviously, I'm just choosing these ones at the moment, or picking these ones at the moment. People become mechanical with it and aren't aware of what they're actually saying because it's just a repetitive process. And I know I used to be like that at school. Oh, Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, blah, blah, blah. Well, now that I understand it more from an esoteric point of view and see that it is an initiation prayer, the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's all to do with the different kinds of energies with us uniting with the divine and the divine sending them down to us. Gurdjieff does the involution and the evolution. And divine source is sending energies to us and we take it in and we work with it, use them emanations, and we send them back out again. But are we sending them back out in a good way, or are we sending out negative energy, negative thoughts? It's something we have to work with. And most people, the sheep of this world, those that aren't awake in any way, aren't working on themselves, they're not working with that energy that's being sent down and accumulating it and transforming it. One of the important things, important words, the transformation, to send it back out again to the divine and into the universe so that it can be part of this continuing work. Instead, they're sending out, most people, it's horrible things to say, but most people that are asleep just have no concern of what it is they're doing within themselves, the alchemical transformation. They're just living their life, taking on board what they can see and do to get what they want, and not to be part of the process of the divine work of the whole harmony of the running of the universe. So I looked up some emanation quotes. So I've got views from the real world here. The views from the real world. Gurdjieff's talking about what matter is and what it emanates. In my book, this is Views from the Real World, page 204. Matter is the same everywhere, but it constantly changes place and enters into different combinations. From the density of a stone to the finest matter, each do is in the octave, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. Each do has its own emanation, its own atmosphere. For each thing eats or is eaten. One thing eats another. I eat you, you eat him, and so on. Everything within man either evolves or involves. So I suppose going back to what I was saying at the beginning, all this stealing the energy from other people when they're not using it wisely or just using it, superfluously. In a way, we are eating that energy to transform it into a higher energy vibe. And he goes on, an entity is something which remains for a certain duration without evolving. Each substance can be an entity. Every entity emanates, sends forth. By means of positive and negative matter, new formations resulted from the emanations of the suns. Emanations penetrate everything according to their possibilities. So according to their possibilities, the emanations are whether they're a higher vibration or a lower vibration. That's the possibilities. If it's a lower vibration, it won't do much. It gets wasted energy. Or if it was a higher vibration, it would help in the harmonious development of the universe and working with God, which is what we're trying to do in this work. We're trying to work with the divine source. We want to be part of that we want to be part of the continuing emanations of the universe. And he goes on, he says earlier, actually, a few pages earlier, in Views from the Real World, one teaching says that when the world was still nothing, there were emanations. There was God, the Word. God, the Word, is the world. God said, let it be so, and sent the Father and the Son. He's always sending the Father and the Son, and once he sent the Holy Ghost. Take the ray of creation. At the top is the absolute, God the Word, dividing it into three, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. All the three forces necessary to produce a new manifestation are in the absolute himself. He sends them forth from himself, emanates them. So he's coming back to the law of three here. The law of three, holy affirming, holy denying, holy reconciling. Everything works on the law of three. And if there's, too much over affirming, holy affirming, then there's going to be imbalance. If there's too much holy denying, it's going to be an imbalance, or too less of one. The recipe has to be just right. The ingredients has to be just right to make the recipe work to create that finer energy, which should be the neutral energy that's coming through. We're all trying to be impartial here. So with the emanations that are coming forth from everything that's being created, we're also, like I say, giving out them emanations ourselves. We're collecting them emanations. But Gurdjieff talks about how let's call them the useless emanations, because I can't remember what the word is he uses. They all go to the moon and feed the moon, and then the moon is developing and will sometime become in the future some kind of earth, and then that will become a sun, like our planet Earth is evolving to one day to become the sun. But these can only do that through right emanations. If the wrong emanations are coming through, then the planets won't evolve into the next stage. They won't evolve or crystallize in the correct way. They will become deformed, malignant. They won't become the next best version of itself. And I had some people were quite shocked when I said about the Earth would transform into a sun at some point. They're like, oh, what will happen to us? Well, hopefully us humans will have transformed into the next stage as well, whether we'll become sun beings or maybe we move on to the moon when that becomes an Earth. It's all very interesting what could be happening. Personally, I think a lot of the people who don't are not waking up per se, and all their thoughts are going to the moon to help that develop, maybe they will go to the moon because they've got to learn to evolve still as well and change, where maybe those that are waking up and that are working on themselves and are trying to work with the divine source's endlessness and help in the harmonious development of the whole universe will stay on and be part of the sun, solar beings. I want to talk to someone who does the Steiner work about that kind of thing, because that's quite complicated, I find at times. It'd be nice to have a chat with someone about that. But I see in all these different esoteric works, it's all about evolvement, whether it's our evolvement, the planet's evolvement, a tree's evolvement, everything's evolving onwards. And I find that a lot of people that don't do any of this kind of work think this is it, how we are now. We've come to the end of our evolvement. We don't evolve anymore because we've reached maybe not perfection, but the peak, which I think is quite wrong. I think the whole point of esoteric work is to help with the evolvement. And we've got to remember that many people don't look to the future, aren't really interested in the past either, or they think that humanity's been the same throughout the known history that we have, where I strongly believe, let's say, for example, ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptians thought very differently to how we think. Where I see a lot of people, especially academics, try to put a 21st century mind onto the people from the past. The ancient Egyptians apparently thought like we did. Well, I don't think they did. I think they had a totally different way of a mindset. They still had like 1 + 1 = 2 and things like that, but they had a different kind of consciousness of how the world evolves. And I think if you look at, let's say, the ancient American Indians, they would think totally different to how we think today, where many academics would say, well, they were quite, backwards and stupid, and we've evolved to more intelligent people. I don't know about that. But anyway, let me go on about Gurdjieff. A little rant then, sorry about that. So Gurdjieff's talking about how everything is in movement, everything has emanations because everything eats something and is itself eaten by something. The earth also has emanations, and so has the sun, and these emanations are matter. The earth has an atmosphere which limits its emanations. Between the earth and the sun, there are 3 kinds of emanations. The emanations of the earth go only a short distance. Those of the planets go much farther, but not all the way to the sun. Between us and the sun, there are 3 kinds of matter, each with a different density. First, the matter near the earth containing its emanations. Then the matter containing emanations of the planet. And still further, the matter where there are only emanations of the sun. So there's like different flows or waves of emanations going through the universe. The sun's sending out lots of emanations that thankfully can reach other planets. Each planet has a certain emanation that it sends out that can, they all filter thinner and thinner as they move further away. Like with Gurdjieff, he talks about all these different laws on different planets, different worlds. For example, on the sun absolute, where the divine source lives, his endlessness, there are no laws because he's the creator. Actually, maybe there's 3 laws. I wasn't prepared to talk about that, so I haven't looked it up. But anyway, and then the next planets away from the divine sources sun absolute where he lives, they've got a few more laws because they've moved further away from his endlessness, where everything's perfect over here with the divine source. Let's give him the peace sign, all perfect. But as them emanations come out, they affect the next planets or moons and suns, and they've got let's say 90% of them emanations coming from the absolute are affecting them, and then be further out from them is the next set of suns and moons and galaxies, and they're also picking up the emanations of the divine source, but they're getting thinner and thinner. So by the time they've got it, it's at 80%. And I believe by the time it gets to us on planet Earth, we're on some of the highest amount of laws, because we're getting the thinnest amount or the least amount of divine energy, which is why we need to work on ourselves even more than they do on the other planets around the galaxy and the universe, because we're far, far away. But we still are part of the divine, and we've not been forgotten. Right, I was going to do some all and everything. So, oh, actually, no, I wasn't really. But anyway, he reminds us in all and everything, emanations of our most holy Son Absolute, called Theo Melogos, or Word God. Theo, God, Mert, the working, Melogos, Logos is the word. And I've talked before about how the Logos, the word, everything began with the word. It's like a magic spell, isn't it? And most spells are spoken. We are speaking our truth, hopefully, but words can be manipulated and inverted, and we can also tell lies, fibs. And those again are emanations. What kind of emanations are coming from forth from your mouth? Are you speaking truth, nice high vibration, or are you speaking little fibs and lies, low vibration? As you work on yourself and develop yourself, something you do begin to notice is when you're with other people, you feel that lower vibration and they're mechanically talking away, blah, 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 blah. Normally because they're lying, you can feel that vibration. Can't sit there saying to them, we know you're lying. It's just mechanical ways and their acts, and they're caught up in their habits and things. But we're trying to bring ourselves above that. We don't want to be part of that. We could be aware they're being like it and feel for them, and perhaps show them by example how we don't want to be like that. So easy to get caught up in all that kind of thing, but we don't want to be talking mechanically and lying and sending out lower vibrational emanations. He said imaginings then. Emanations. This is all about emanations. But as we develop ourselves, we can notice it in other people and become more aware of it, and then not let it affect us. Maybe they're the emanations we need to steal from them so we can develop on ourselves more. Maybe that's how we do it, is by becoming aware of it, seeing it happening in other people. Maybe that's helping transform it inside ourselves. I need to get someone on really to discuss this, like someone who understands it more. But it'd be nice to do a show with someone about this. What are the emanations and how do we steal them from other people that are being wasted by other people, and turn them and transform them for ourselves? As I've said before, this is all in our chemical process, and that's what we're working upon. And I'm going to finish with reviews from the real world. Quote, Gurdjieff says, each part is under different influences, and if we free ourselves of one, we become slaves of another. For example, I can be free in my mind, but I cannot change the emanations of my body. My body responds differently. A man sitting next to me affects me by his emanations. I know that I should be polite, but I feel antipathy. Each center has its own sphere of emanations, and at times there is no escaping them. And that reminds me that whenever, because I use public transport a lot these days, because now I'm back in London, it's easier than riding the motorbike about. But I hopefully try and remember, and every time I get on a train or a bus, I just bless that little seat before I sit down on it, because someone else has been on there with all their emanations, and you're picking up their vibes. And I'm going to give you a kind of a crude example. I remember once on a full bus, a man had to get off, and I took his seat. And this man had been, I had watched him, he was in a daydream the whole way on that bus journey. He was just, in his own mind, not awake at all. But when I sat on that chair without blessing it and forgetting to have it cleansed, suddenly I felt all this sexual arousal, sexual images were coming into my head. And that's what he'd been daydreaming about, obviously, sex. And his emanations were still in that seat. And that's because I'd forgotten to bless it. I was then picking them up. Sometimes you can go and sit in a train seat or a bus seat, whatever, you start worrying about something. That's probably because the person before you who had been in there had been really worrying and been leaving emanations, imprints onto that chair where they've been worrying and so forth. So I do highly recommend just a little wave of the hand, bless that seat or chair before you sit down, even in a park bench. Many people go to parks to sit down and mope about their lives. That's a horrible way of saying it, but try and clear their head. Public, just give it a little quick little blessing. Nobody knows what you're doing. You can either think it or say it. Bless this seat, let it be clean. But anyway, enough of me. Till next time, thank you for listening, and keep them emanations flowing in a positive vibe. Bye.